Chapter 4 Environmental Management. Revision. Look where I am standing. I am standing in the midst of nature. In the language of science, I can preferably say that I am standing in the midst of an ecosystem of which even I am a part of. Oh, now this brings me back to this word, ecosystem. By now, you all might have definitely recalled this word from your previous grade. Come, let us quickly revise this concept in brief. An ecosystem is the whole biotic community in a given area plus its abiotic environment. It is a system which is formed due to interaction among all the living organisms living in a particular given area and also their interaction with their physical environment. See these plants, animals, flowing river, chirping birds, blazing sunlight, swiftly moving wind. All these living things and the physical environment are the components of an ecosystem. We have already learned that organisms form an integral part of an ecosystem. The condition of feed and being feeded is a continuous ongoing process in an ecosystem. Primary consumers, secondary consumers, apex consumers, and mixed consumers are all predators of our ecosystem. Primary consumers directly depend on autotrophs for their food. Secondary consumers directly depend on primary consumers or herbivores for their food. Apex consumers depend on primary, that is herbivores, as well as secondary consumers, that is carnivores, for their food. Mixed consumers or omnivores feed on both plants and animals as their food. From this, we can infer that for the functioning of our ecosystem, this chain is very important and it is called the food chain. We have studied the concept of food chain and food web in our previous grades. Come, let us brush up this concept in brief. A definite sequence of interactions that go on continuously between the producers, consumers, and saprophytes is called a food chain. An ecosystem consists of many food chains that are interconnected at various levels. This interconnected network of food chains together forms a food web. Now see this picture over here. This picture represents a food chain in an ecosystem. This food chain begins with a producer. The grasshopper shown over here is a primary consumer which feeds on the producer. The grasshopper is then eaten by a frog which is a secondary consumer of our environment. The tertiary consumer of this food chain is the snake which preys on the frog. The snake is then caught and eaten by the apex consumer, that is the eagle. When this eagle dies, the saprophytes feed on it and obtain their food. In this way, each organism over here is connected to each other by the need of food. This struggle for existence is also explained in one of the verses of Bhagavad Puran, which says, Jivo jivasya jivanam. This means that one animal is food for another animal. A grasshopper is eaten by a frog is eaten by a snake, and a snake is eaten by another animal. In this way, the process of destruction goes on for the subsistence of living beings. This is nature's law. Sometimes, depending upon the availability of food, a predator changes its prey. Due to this, different food chains are formed and they become interconnected to each other. This creates an intricate network in the ecosystem called the food web. After this brief recall about ecosystem, I don't think you would mind a quick review of this topic. Ecosystem, a review. We all know that interactions and interrelations among the biotic and abiotic components and their physical environment together form an ecosystem. In an ecosystem, every component plays an important role. Food-producing autotrophic plants of the ecosystem are the basic source of food for all the consumers. Therefore, they are most crucial for the smooth functioning of an ecosystem. Herbivores like deer, goat, sheep, cow, buffalo, horse and camel, which feed on the producers, are also important. The duty to check that the number of herbivores is not increasing in surplus is managed by the carnivores, and thus they are also equally important to Mother Nature. You might have definitely wondered at times whether these worms feeding on the leaves, innumerable microorganisms found at filthy places, these termites, these insects in the animal dung are really useful to the ecosystem? Even if all these organisms appear dirty and grimy, they are also vital organisms of an ecosystem. They are the cleaners of the ecosystem. Thus, our very existence is due to every single component present in our surrounding environment. Hence, we need to take care of all these components. Come, let us take a stroll in this wonderful forest. While walking through the forest, one question just struck me. What would have happened if all this forest litter and dead animals did not undergo decomposition? If all these wastes did not undergo decomposition, then waste would start accumulating and piling up in the environment. The nutrient cycling in the nature would have been disturbed, and thus, ultimately, environmental imbalance would have been experienced. Now, after revisiting so much about components, food chains, food webs, and many more things about an ecosystem, this revision is definitely incomplete without discussing two main topics, that is, trophic levels and energy pyramid. Each level in the food chain is called a trophic level. A trophic level is the step at which the organism obtains its food in the chain. The plants or the producers of our ecosystem constitute the first trophic level. The herbivores or the primary consumers that feed upon plants constitute the second trophic level. The carnivores or the secondary consumers that feed on the herbivores constitute the third trophic level. Finally, the large carnivores, also called the top carnivores or the tertiary consumers, form the fourth trophic level. Energy exchange takes place at each trophic level. The initial quantity of energy goes on decreasing at every level of energy exchange. Similarly, the number of organisms also decrease from the lowest level to the highest level. This pattern of energy exchange in an ecosystem is called the energy pyramid. After this whole review about an ecosystem, I want to ask you a question to test your brain power. Tell me whether a bird which nests on a tree and feeds on fishes of the nearby lake is a part of both plant and lake ecosystem or not? Yes. The bird is a part of both the ecosystem. Now here, an incomplete chart of an ecosystem is shown. Will you be able to fill this chart? Come, let's give it a try. Well, from this, I feel we have revised about ecosystem pretty well, huh? Let us go through one more question and answer session. Let me give you a situation. In southern India, rice plantations are carried out on large scale. Due to such abundance of food, plenty of grasshoppers flourish over there. Frogs feed on these grasshoppers. Therefore, their number also increases, and simultaneously, the snakes which feed on these frogs also increase in number. But if the number of frogs are suddenly reduced, then what will be the effect on rice? If the number of frogs reduce, then it goes without saying that the number of grasshopper will increase more, due to which more number of grasshoppers will feed on rice plantations, and hence it will lead to more devastation of the rice crops. Which predator will increase in number and which will reduce in number? The number of grasshoppers will increase, whereas the number of snakes will decrease. What will be the overall impact on the ecosystem? The equilibrium of the ecosystem will be disturbed adversely due to such consequences. Now, whenever we talk about ecosystem, it is like talking about our surrounding environment. Environment can be described as the sum total of all living and non-living things that are present around us. It includes different animals, birds, insects, plants, trees, etc. Things like cars, buses, trains, bench, desk also are very much a part of our environment. Come, let us discuss about environment and ecosystem in the next part of this chapter in detail. Environment and ecosystem. The concept of environment is a very broad concept. The interaction of living organisms with the physical, chemical, and biological factors is called the environment. To cut the definition in short, we can say that an environment is any and everything that surrounds a living organism. It includes all the living, non-living, natural, and man-made components that exist in our surroundings. Environment can be broadly classified into two main types: natural environment and man-made environment. Components like air, water, soil, and all living organisms are included under natural environment. Constant interactions take place between living and non-living components. These interrelationships are very important for smooth functioning of an environment. Man-made environment directly or indirectly influences the natural environment. Environment is made up of two main components: biotic components and abiotic components. The study of interactions between the biotic and abiotic components of the environment is called ecology. And the most important basic unit used in ecological studies is called an ecosystem. Environment comprises different types of ecosystem. We have already studied about some types of ecosystem in our previous grades. Look at this pond. Even this is called an ecosystem. Our planet Earth is the largest ecosystem. Thus, we can say that biotic and abiotic components in a given area and their interactions with each other together form an ecosystem. We have already learnt about biogeochemical cycles. Do you remember? Gaseous cycle and sedimentary cycle are the two main types of biogeochemical cycles. These cycles play an important role in circulation and recycling of nutrients within an ecosystem. They help to maintain a balance in the environment. Along with these cycles, various food chains present in an ecosystem also help in maintaining the balance of the environment. Existence of human life on the earth is only possible because of existence of nature on earth. Therefore, it is our prime duty to maintain the balance of natural environment and to conserve it. It is rightly said that the earth on which we are living is not a hereditament, but should be considered as a lent that we need to protect for our future generations. Even the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhiji, has rightly said that the earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed. Come, in the next part of this chapter, let us study about conservation of environment in detail.